Welcome back to this 001 Game Creator video tutorial series, where we'll be continuing to cover how to create your very own role-playing game from start to finish using the built-in action RPG template. In the second part of this bonus tutorial, we'll be adding hidden objects and temporary blocking, as well as implementing an autosave feature and removing the black borders that appear around small maps. In the last tutorial, we used a zone to toggle our bedroom roof on and off, but we can also use zones for hidden objects and to temporarily block off areas we don't want the player to have access to until certain conditions have been met. Let's start by hiding a potion and some money in this bedside table. To do this, click on the zone icon and then move your mouse cursor over your map and click and drag to create a small rectangle. Then give your new zone an appropriate name. I'll name mine Bedside Table Zone. Then double click on the action key pressed beside zone trigger to open the script editor. Add a once branch event and then click on the expand events button, type item into the search box and double click on the add/remove item event. Select main for the actor and then click on the button besides number of items and select the potion item. Then click on the expand events button again, this time typing money into the search box and double clicking on the change money event underneath the current player/party section. Set the value to 20 and then click OK. Add a message box event and type an appropriate message that lets the player know they found a potion and received some money. Then select the once branch event and add a second message box with an appropriate message that lets the player know they've already found the potion and money and that the bedside table is now empty. When testing your game, simply walk up to the bedside table and press the enter key on your keyboard to activate the zone. Now let's look at using zones to create temporary blocking. During the creation of our kill quest, we added a separate condition to reward the player for eliminating the spiders before speaking to the warrior. While giving the player a choice can be beneficial, there are also times where it may be undesirable to do so. In these situations, we can use zones to temporarily block off a path to the player. With the zone tool selected, click and drag along the bottom of the map to create a single line from left to right. Then give your zone an appropriate name. I'll name mine Block Zone. Then tick the Actors Blocking as Well checkbox and click OK. Select the In map from the Maps panel in the bottom left corner of the screen and, with the pointer tool selected, double-click on our warrior actor inside the inn to open the actor window. Then double-click on the Talk To/activated trigger to open the script editor. Select the Equip Item event and then click on the Expand Events button, type Zone into the search box and double-click on the Enable Disable Blocking of Zone event. Select My First Map followed by Block Zone and then set the blocking to Unblock. This will prevent the player from entering the cutscene map until they've spoken to our warrior actor and accepted the kill quest. This means that our special reward condition is no longer necessary, as there isn't any way for the player to defeat the spiders before speaking to our warrior. As such, we can delete these three events from the right side of the comparison branch event. Before we move on, there's one last thing we're going to look at, and that's the shape of zones themselves. If you hadn't noticed already, you can switch between a rectangle and polygon shape zone by clicking on the shape buttons in the panel to the left whenever the zone icon is selected. For polygon zones, rather than clicking and dragging, you only need to click once for a new point to be created. By continuing to click on your map, you'll add additional nodes that will start to create your shape. Then to finalize the zone, simply double-click inside it for the zone to be created. You can then use the pointer tool to modify each node point separately for more precision. Now let's look at implementing an autosave feature for our game. The Action RPG template already has a pre-made in-game menu that players can access by pressing the escape key on their keyboard. Amongst the various options is the ability to save and load progress from one of 4 slots. However, nowadays, most players expect games to autosave their progress after completing specific tasks/checkpoints. We can save a player's progress quite easily by using a save game to slot event, but since we're likely going to call this more than once, creating a custom event would be a better option. Custom events allow you to create unique script events that are specifically tailored to your project and offer quite a lot of power and flexibility. Click on the Custom Events button along the main toolbar and then click on the Add Resource button in the top left to create a new custom event. Give your custom event an appropriate name. I'll name mine Autosave. You can use the description text box to write a brief summary of what your custom event does and use the icon box to specify an image that will represent your custom event. These will then be visible from the script editor and are useful for if you have a lot of custom events or are co-developing your game with others. I'll leave these blank for now. Click on the Edit Script button to open the script editor. Then click on the Expand Events button, type Save into the search box, and double-click on the Save Setting event. For the section text box, type Save. For the key text box, type Slot 3 without a space. And then for the value text box, type Autosave. By doing this, we're creating a name for our save file that will be displayed when the player opens the Save Load Game menu. Since the pre-made in-game menu shows 4 slots for the player to choose from, we'll be leaving the first 3 for the player to use and reserving the 4th slot for our autosave feature. If you're wondering why we type slot 3 instead of slot 4, that's because 001 starts counting from 0, which means slot 3 is actually referring to the 4th slot on the Save Load Game menu. Click on the Expand Events button and type Save into the search box, like before, only this time double-clicking the Save Game to Slot event. Set the slot number to 3, not 4, to ensure that our 4th slot is used for our autosave. Click on the Expand Events button again, this time typing Log into the search box, and then double-clicking on the Display Log text event. Type an appropriate message that lets the player know that the autosave has completed successfully. This will display a small prompt in the bottom left corner of the game window, similar to the text that pops up when the player picks up an item. Now we can use our new autosave custom event whenever the player completes a quest. Let's set this up to save after the player has retrieved the potion item and for when they've defeated the spiders. While on My First Map, and with the pointer tool selected, double-click on the NPC inside the bedroom and click on the Edit Script button to open the script editor. Select the message box event at the bottom, and then click on the Expand Events button and double-click your autosave custom event from the top of the list. Then click on the Actor Templates button along the main toolbar, select the Spider Actor template, and click on the Edit Base Actor button, followed by the Edit Script button to open the script editor. Add your autosave custom event underneath the Change Money event, and click OK to close the script editor. Another benefit of using a custom event instead of just copying and pasting these 3 events into everything is that if you decide you want to make a change to your autosave script, all you have to do is edit the autosave custom event itself, and all instances will be automatically updated across your project without needing you to edit each script manually. Test your game to see your autosave custom event in action. After your autosave has completed once, press Escape to open the pre-made in-game menu and select Load Game near the bottom. You should see your autosave occupying the last slot of the list. Before we conclude this tutorial, there's one last thing we're going to look at, and that's removing the black borders that appear around maps that are smaller than the game's resolution. The project we've created doesn't currently exhibit this problem. However, if we set the video resolution in the game settings window to 1024 by 768 and then test our game, the problem will become immediately obvious. Since different players will have a variety of different screen resolutions, there's no practical way of ensuring our map sizes match them. Fortunately, there's a really easy and simple solution to this problem, and that's changing the camera itself so that it zooms in to fill in the black borders, regardless of the player's screen resolution. To do this, click on the System Triggers button along the main toolbar, and then double-click on the Introduction System Trigger to open the script editor. Click on the Expand Events button, type Zoom into the search box, and double-click on the Change Zoom event under the Camera section. Then click on the Small Use Value button, type Size into the search box, and double-click on the X Size Use Value under the Screen section. Now add a / to the value, which represents division, and type 800 as the number we wish to divide the horizontal resolution by. This number represents the amount of horizontal pixels we want to be visible, regardless of what resolution our player is using. The way we got this number is from our maps themselves. If you'll recall, the width of all of our maps is set to 25. Since each unit is a multiple of 32 pixels, we multiply them together to get 800 pixels, which is the minimum width of all of our maps, and therefore the minimum amount of pixels we want to be visible at all times. If you now test your game, you'll see that all of the black borders are gone, and you can freely change your game resolution to whatever you like without any more worries. As a side note, for certain projects it might be more appropriate to change the zoom based on the amount of vertical pixels instead. For this, simply use the screen Y size instead of X, and then divide based on the amount of vertical pixels rather than horizontal ones. This concludes our special bonus tutorials as part of our RPG series. If you enjoyed this series and would like to see more video tutorials in the future, then please let us know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.